Welcome to another in the series, Sip and Chat, a place where we talk about the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. It's our pleasure this afternoon to be coming into your homes and to be talking about the goodness of the Lord. Welcome to another in the series, Sip and Chat, a place where we talk about issues of the heart, everyday issues, family issues, just about any topic that we believe is pertinent to a healthy and a whole life. So this afternoon, we're going to delve into another very interesting topic, and we have an exciting guest. An issue that we're going to be discussing this afternoon is one that, for many persons, it's a hush hush, don't talk about it. But it's something that has come to the fore both in our society and internationally, and we believe that it should be given the just kind of space, kind of environment that it deserves in terms of discussion and how it is supposed to be managed. So with me this afternoon is my good friend, attorney at law, mediator. She is so multifaceted, always doing something, involved in a lot of social engagement, just on the move. And she will tell you a little bit more about herself. But welcome today, Attorney at Law Anne-Marie Bishop. It's my pleasure to have you with me this afternoon. I know your time is in demand, so I'm very happy that you have decided to come on the show today. So I want to talk a little bit first about who you are and what led you into the legal profession.
Thank you, Dr. Tomlinson. It's my pleasure to be here, and I will find time for you as you have found time to be on some sessions I've had online, which I really appreciate. I'm called to be an attorney at law. I didn't do well at the University of the West Indies, and I saw an ad in the paper. I applied to Holborn College, which is the University of Wolverhampton. I got accepted. I was rejected in my application for law school at the University of the West Indies. And within a few days, I got my UK visa, student visa, and I left the Saturday when I was about 17, close to my 18th birthday. And the journey in London was a long one, very challenging, but God opened many doors for me and put persons in my life that assisted me, and I was able to complete my law degree and also my bar exams. My oldest daughter, Leon, was born in London as well. So I became qualified as a barrister of England and Wales, and I'm a member of Lincoln's Inn. I returned to Jamaica, completed 6 months, and got called to the bar in 2000, July. And here I am today.
Excellent. This discussion could take on a new shape now, because one of the things that we love to do at Sip and Chat is really to tell people how to turn their nose. This month we're talking about resilience. So, yes. Just hearing you how you had applied to the University of the West Indies and you hadn't gotten through, but your dream was still alive. Though differed, it was not denied. It was still in line, and you went on to the UK to get your law degree. We'll have to have you back to talk about that. But today we want to address this issue of domestic violence. And for many persons, this issue is something like, let it stay in the family. I can't allow my friends to know. So I want to look, first of all, what is domestic violence? Because for a lot of persons, unless you reach the extremity of somebody being knocked out, yes, or actually being physically abused, that's when they say it's domestic violence. So talk to us about what exactly is domestic violence.
Domestic violence is any kind of abuse, be it physical, sexual, psychological, verbal, financial. All of that comes under domestic abuse. And those that I've just stated are examples of what domestic violence is. So it's any abuse within a relationship setting. It can be an abuse between partners, or it can be an abuse between parents and their children. It can be an abuse between the elderly and their caregivers. So it's within a domestic setting.
Right. So domestic is a setting in which it takes place.
Not the physical setting within the home necessarily, but it can also be in an extended family setting.
Okay, understood.
So it doesn't have to be your immediate family. It can also be your caregiver that you leave with the children who are abusing the children.
Okay.
It can be between the parents and those parents abusing their parents. So their senior citizens are also subject to domestic violence abuse.
Very, very important. So for many persons, when we talk about abuse, domestic abuse, they always think about physical, but we're saying that domestic abuse, or what is commonly referred to as DMV, can be physical, which...
It can be physical, meaning the person hit you, beat you, that is physical, cause you injury physically. It can be verbal, so it can be words, derogatory words.
Let us pause there a while ago, just now. So we're saying that it can be verbal, right?
Yes.
And that is one that somebody said, is that really abuse? Yes, it is. Because as you know, and as I said in Jamaica, that people used to say that sticks and stones will break my bone, but words cannot harm me, and that's not true.
That is not true at all, because verbal abuse can do more damage to the person psychologically than even the physical abuse. It affects their self-esteem. It causes them to feel inferior at times, and they are persons who are subjected to psychological or verbal abuse tend to be timid, and they're more submissive and reluctant to act. They tend to be very passive.
Right, because the objective of the abuser is to control.
That is
right,
correct.
And to say, and to coerce and to threaten.
That is correct.
So automatically the person who is being abused begins to become intimidated.
That is correct.
And suffer from this sense of low self-esteem, because here is this person who is trying to control me or say things to degrades me.
Right.
So clearly I must be a nobody.
And eventually, at times, a person may take on that perception of what the abuser say they are.
Exactly, because we say they say it long enough,
they accept it.
Exactly, actually. And I think what the challenge is because sometimes the person who's been abused thinks that, okay, but if he loves me and he says it, then maybe almost lose their sense of self to adopt what is being said about them. And so that is very, very important. But why do people think that, why do men think that, they should respond to women? What is really triggering that kind of behavior by men?
Well, I must admit that abuse is done by both males and females, but the research has shown that more men are abusers, and I say this entirely without prejudice.
Okay, let's take a sip.
But even locally, more women are abused and children are abused than men. It is a fact that men tend not to report it as opposed to women.
I can just see a man going to the police station and the officer says, "Why are you here, sir?" And he says, "I'm here today because my wife just gave me a punch in the face."
And based on our culture, most men, they're unlikely to attend the police station and make such a report. That is a fact.
So the numbers, even as you try, the research is, as you rightfully say, the research is showing that quite a higher number of men are abused verbally.
Yes.
Because one of the new arrangement as it relates to relationships, right?
Yes.
A growing norm is a lot of older women and younger men.
And
so sometimes that dynamics also brings with it this level of control, monetary and emotionally, by the senior person.
Hence, financial abuse is one form of abuse, and it falls within domestic violence. But Dr. Leleith, you mentioned the triggers. Persons sometimes when they are stressed or suffering from depression or they're out of work, and we're going through a pandemic, they don't know how to deal with their issues, and therefore they take out their anger on their spouse. So that's one trigger. Sometimes they feel unappreciated and frustrated for whatever reason, and again they take it out verbally or physically on their spouse. Where that's no excuse. If you're stressed, you need to seek help.
Right.
Speak to somebody about it, be it your pastor, be it your justice of the peace in the community, be it a good friend. It's never acceptable to abuse your spouse, whether it's male or female, or to abuse your children.
Exactly. But so what we want to get an appreciation of as well is that it's not correct as well to embrace the abuse
Yes,
and
that's
actually
true.
feel that I deserve to be abused.
Nobody deserves to be abused. And if you're in an abusive situation, whether you're a male or a female, there are groups out there, support groups. You can attend the courthouse and seek the necessary protection orders under the Domestic Violence Act. You can report the matter to the police. There's help, so you don't have to accept the abuse from your spouse. And do not wait until the point where you're mean, serious injury or death.
And so, talk to us a little bit. So, a person is abused, right? Should I wait till the third time to report it, or you think it's important that from once there's an attempt, how do we manage some of these processes? So, for especially when it comes to physical, even all of them are very painful because one of the abuse that we haven't talked about a lot is also the whole matter of emerging online abuse.
Which is very relevant now because we're in the online environment more than maybe 5 years ago. And the online abuse shows itself where, for example, you send a private photograph to your spouse and the relationship is on rocks and he or she decide to post intimate photographs of you online. And that in itself is a form of abuse.
Right. Because again, the idea is to control. So if Mary says to Tony, I'm leaving you tomorrow, he says, really? Well, watch me. And so he uses those kinds of tactics or strategy
Yes.
to manipulate the situation. So that is also very, very important.
And not just that, Dr. Lily, they also may post videos of an intimate nature online. And that in itself will cause any woman to be depressed
Right.
because it's so personal.
Why?
And that in itself is a form of abuse.
As we're on that, so we go back to, so John is being abused by Mary. Just walk us through, and we want persons to understand, because even a lot of persons who are in the church are being abused. But let us just walk through a process. So, for example, if somebody is being abused, what should be the first response? Should I, as I was saying, should I wait till I feel like I get enough hate, or should I just make sure that somebody is aware? How should I respond?
So abuse doesn't happen overnight. Usually there are signs. So for example, your spouse start to speak to you in a very aggressive manner, shouting. He shows or she shows signs of anger. There's no communication. If he's the breadwinner of the family, or even if you're working and you earn less, he begins to withhold funds from the family, so you're unable to pay the bills on time or at all. He refuses to perhaps give you money to purchase food or to do activities for yourself or the children. And he may step to you, meaning we're Jamaicans, so we can step to you mean that he may raise his hand, but he may not hit you on the first occasion.
Right, so he makes an advance.
He makes an advance, or he calls you certain derogatory terms, and try to belittle you, not just in the home, but he may extend that by saying certain things to you in public, in front of your friends and his friends,
Right.
to show a disregard for you. So those are signs to suggest that you need to seek counseling for the family as a couple. And if a spouse hits you, you don't need a second or a third or a fifth hit physically to realize that something is wrong.
Right. Especially like you're rightfully saying, and we want this to be very clear, because a lot of persons, and remember we say men as well as women are victims of abuse, right?
Yes.
But what you need to understand is that if you are used to your spouse and there is a tendency or behavior pattern that you have observed, you need to take note of it, especially when there's a drastic change in the behavior pattern, because things happen, especially like what we're seeing, talking about COVID.
Yes.
And I mean, if some spouse lose their job, and for them being able to come home and provide and so on, not being able to respond to those demands can cause them to internalize,
Right.
and then they begin to act out. So what you want to do is that you want to be very conscious of your mate's behavior,
Yes.
so that when you notice a tendency, you don't just say, Is what we're doing today. But you look on the pattern as it is
That is
emerging.
correct. And in a lot of spouses are, a lot of persons have lost their job since COVID, um, the COVID pandemic, and we're still going through it. Some persons are on reduced hours, so lower income. So there's more frustration. And as Dr. Leleith said, if you're familiar with your spouse and their behavior pattern, you will see the signs. So don't wait until it reaches a very drastic stage to take action. It's communication is part of any relationship. The way you communicate with each other, and if you need help, speak to your pastor, speak to a good friend, speak to your justice of the peace, speak to somebody, and help is available. So whether you're the abuser or your spouse is abusing you, it's never acceptable. And one of the best way to deal with it, if you're physically abused, for example, so he thumps you in the mouth and in front of the children, that is unacceptable, and I would encourage you to take the necessary action, because on the next occasion you may not live to tell the tale.
Right.
That's just a reality.
And quite often, many times, that those persons who are not able to live to tell the tales, had they been alive, they would say to you that this wasn't the first or the second time. So what we're saying to persons out there is that be very cognizant of who your mate is, understand the behavior patterns. And I know in Jamaica we say, boy, we don't want anybody with business, we don't know what, but there are professional persons that you can go to, and you can get assistance, not just for yourself, but also for your spouse.
Yes.
But you have also got to know when it is that you must respond. A lot of the hush-hush that ultimately leads to the death of persons, or even if they don't die, they can be so destroyed personally, based on the derogatory terms that are used by them, that they almost say, you know what, life is not worth living. I mean, who am I? He just called me a dog, a old gal, a floor mat, those kind of terms.
Sometimes person begin to believe that they're that.
Prostitute, and the rest of the terms that are being used. But what we're saying is that you need to understand your mate. Now, because of the culture, right, a lot of people like to be hush-hush. No, so if you're close to somebody, so we identify some of the things that the abuser will do, right? They'll call you names, they'll bite, they'll attack you, and so on. But what if spit, push, and all those kinds of things? Sexually they might coerce you if you sin. That is abuse as well.
Yes, because inter-partner violence is also a form of abuse, where they not just demand sex, but they take it. So technically, your spouse is raping you. Also, in inter-partner violence, some men don't want their wives or spouse to be on contraceptive. So the woman have more children than she probably originally wanted, and that is used to keep her in line.
Right.
Especially if she's of a low economic income and he's the main breadwinner. So coupled with interpartner violence is often financial abuse, where he withholds funds, and the wife, the female, would think, oh gosh, I have 4 children, I don't have anywhere to go, who is going to take me in? My relatives' house full, so she stay in the abusive situation, and it becomes the norm.
And one of the things I found to Amory, is that you have persons who, if initially, say, Mary, that's my character today.
Yes.
So just making up a name. If Mary and John were getting together, right, and say the extended family was not in support, right, for whatever reason, maybe his nose wasn't straight enough, or they didn't like his back, whatever reason, people have their reasons. What we have found in our interviews with some of these women is that because they didn't have the support when they were coming into the relationship,
when they have issues,
when the abuse started,
they
don't want to reach back out. But that's what, and I really want to emphasize that there is help for you. So even if your immediate families will say, serve you right, and we were telling you to be careful, but you were so in love and you wasn't listening and so on. Don't die with that kind of hurt. There are other professional organizations that are out there. So what we want to talk a little bit about is that as a person, how can we identify if somebody is being abused? Are there signs that we can?
Yes, there are signs of abuse, apart from the physical signs. So if Mary is being beaten up by John, Mary may put on excessive makeup. She may start to wear eyeglass, shades.
Right,
And
that's a
she's
common
not,
one.
She don't normally wear shades
Especially inside.
inside. She may choose to wear longer dresses or skirts when she used to show her leg because maybe she got hit on the leg. She may cover up more clothing.
Right.
And for example, if you notice any change with your coworker or your church sister, sometimes you need to fasten up people business, really.
Yeah, so you might be saving a life.
It might be saving a life. Other signs include the person who is normally bubbly and outgoing becomes an introvert and shy, and they rarely speak. They don't want to socialize with their friends anymore or their family. They only stay in the circle of the spouse.
Right.
Those can be signs. So once you know your friend and know how she was before, just inquire as to what is going on with her. Also, if the spouse is picking her up and dropping her off at work, that's one way that's controlling.
Yes, especially when you almost sense the intimidation.
Right. Or if he calls every second when she's out with friends, that's a sign, ladies.
Yeah.
So some men are controlling, and that's where a lot of it starts. So they don't necessarily start with the physical abuse, it's the other issues that they start with.
Right.
The controlling part, and then it gets there.
Right. And what I find is that is it irrationality. I don't know how to made up that word probably, but just the irrational way in which they reason. So if, for example, a spouse might say, "Give me your phone," and I'm like, "Why have to give you my phone?" Depend, because probably you're an outgoing person. You're out there with other people. People seem to like you and they gravitate towards you. And if they ask you, for example, for your phone, and you're like, "Why would you want my phone?" And if you become too possessive of the phone and you don't want to give it to them,
they become suspicious.
They become suspicious because remember, that personality is one that wants to be in control. You're my girl, you're my woman, and if I can't have you, nobody else can have you. As a matter of fact, if anybody else gets you, you will not be who you are. I'm going to make sure that I give them to you with a broken nose or so on. So
true.
we have to understand that those persons need help as well.
They're mentally ill and they need a lot of help.
And that is, and sometimes, although we say it so lightly, Anne-Marie, a lot of them are really mentally ill. And because in Jamaica, we talk about it with such scant regards as well.
Yes, that's true.
And so unless like a mentally ill person goes out there and does something, then we hear a uprising and we become very reactive. But the reality is that there's a lot of issues that relate to mental health, even in relationships, that people don't pay attention to until it is too late. When you watch the news sometime, and they said there was this couple, I always hear the man shouting at the lady. She was always afraid to go out, and sometimes he would yell at her and she always looked a little bit intimidated. But boy, if you know him really kill her because so and so, I would never believe. So we're seeing we need to be conscious of certain types of behavior pattern and even the role that the church plays, because sometimes the church have a tendency to say till death do us part, and that death doesn't mean the death that is according to your lifespan of 70 or anything like that, till the man beat you up and so on. So we have to really look more deeper into this matter of domestic violence and how do we provide necessary support that is available. Talk to us, Anne-Marie, about what is available in Jamaica.
In terms of what is available, before I go into that, Dr. Leleith, women and men, even if you're in a relationship, bear in mind that you're still an individual and you need your individual space. But to advise persons as to what is available, you have the Domestic Violence Act. You don't necessarily need a lawyer. You can go to the parish court, speak to the clerk, and the matter is put before the court. And under the Domestic Violence Act, you can get protection order. It means that the spouse is not to come to your workplace or beseech you in any way. The occupation order may give you exclusive right to the household where you both live. And there's other orders like the maintenance. Under the Maintenance Act, the judge can attach maintenance for the children as part of the Protection and the Domestic Violence Act. So there's help out there. The police, if the party who the order is granted against breaches, the police can arrest him and put him in custody if there's a breach of the court order. So there is help, and we need to be more proactive as opposed to reactive when it comes to domestic violence. And bear in mind that children who observe abuse in the home, they tend to be abusers themselves in the future. So as parents, sometimes we say we're doing it, we're staying for the children's sake. Ladies, that is not the best approach. Mm-hmm. It's best you get the help to protect yourself and your children. That's very important. Don't worry about the past and worry about what people are going to say, what your friends are going to say. Abuse affects upper class, middle class, lower class, educated, uneducated. It's how you react to it. That's important. And on the Sip and Chat show, we are saying, get the help that you need. It's very important.
And there are also a lot of other social groups. Well, definitely you want to join us next week for part 2, because we're going to look at the psychological impact on families.
Yes.
And how, as a person, how does it affect your cognitive processes and how you view yourself as a person who has post-abuse, so to speak.
Yes, yes.
We're going to look a little bit about that. But there are also support groups. There is your church. There is also these NGOs that provide a lot of support. Women Inc. They provide a lot of support to women. So we want to say this afternoon, you don't have to go through it alone. It's not a crime. It's not a disease. You didn't cause it on yourself. Help is out there. And it's better for you today to reach out for help. And we have attorney at law here with me, Anne-Marie Bishop. Tell us a little bit where you can find you in your social space.
Okay, so I have office in Ontario, 103 Main Street, and also office in Portmore, Shop 42, Portmore Town Centre. The Bishop Law Foundation, we have a team of attorneys that are willing to give you free consultation to persons who are victims and survivors of domestic violence. You don't have to pay for that service. Excellent. And my contact numbers are 876-323-9997.
All right.
And I'm on Facebook.
Thank you so very much. Well, you want to join us next week for part 2 of this interesting discussion on domestic violence. Let me tell you something. Sometimes we think that we want to protect ourselves by what we do, but oftentimes we recognize that if we step out and make our situation be known, then we're putting ourselves in a better stead. Stay for the children, but sometimes the children are more affected if we had made this discussion more known to somebody who is a professional. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have today for Sip and Chat. But like I said, we can continue this discussion next week, and we also can continue to online as well. So until next time, it's bye from us here at Sip and Chat.